Mawaz. Good morning and thank you for joining us on TVC Breakfast.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
All right. There seems to be quite a lot on your plate. There's the NPAR, the cash transfer, the school feeding program, government enterprise empowerment program. Help us understand how these programs relate with one another in order to justify the numbers.
Well, they started off as 4 different programs, but we've been working very hard to make the linkages so that we have optimal delivery. So we have an NPower program that's recruiting young people between the ages of 18 and 35, and they exist in every local government. So what we've been trying to do is to get some of them to enumerate the farmers and measure the farmlands around the school feeding, the schools where we feed, so that we're able to get the farmers to grow what is aligned with the menu, because every state has a different menu for the school feeding program. A lot of our cooks don't have utensils for cooking, so we have arranged for some of them to form cooperatives, those that don't have and are interested, to collect loans from the government empowerment and enterprise program. We're hoping in the future that the cash transfer beneficiaries who get 5,000 every month would be able, when they're more stable, to take more, to collect loans from the Jeep program. So all of them actually can support each other if we put our head to it and ensure that they actually, can deliver and impact on people as much as possible.
All right, let me come to you. The SIP program didn't take off across the country at the same time. The reasons are really obvious, because there has to be a test and then to also experiment to see how these things play out. And after the first success, it was spread to other states. But up until now, not all states are still in the mix of what is going on. How do you reconcile this, especially we're going into an election where anything can happen when it comes to the outcome of election, depending on how Nigerians feel. So how do you reconcile the difference of the fact that some states have benefited and other states haven't?
Well, for 2 of our programs, beneficiaries apply directly online, are able to engage directly. So for the NPower program, it does not need the state support. Same thing with Jeep. Our enumerators go in and they don't need to go back to the state structures. But for the school feeding and the cash transfer program, unless we have state support, we're unable to actually engage. Because we can't just walk into primary schools and start feeding. We need to get together with the state structures for school feeding. So we have a stakeholder meeting at which the commissioners for education, for health, for agriculture, for finance, the chairman of SUBEB, school-based management committees come together and we brief them. And then we agree on a menu with content of food that is available and affordable in those states. We bring the IITA, the Federal Ministry of Health. They ensure that the food has the nutritional content that's commensurate to the age of those children. And then the state itself needs to select the cooks that live around the vicinities of those primary schools. That we cannot do from Abuja. We don't know where the primary schools are. So the state itself sets out to do that, has an open, transparent process for selecting these cooks, and then we train them, we screen them, and then the state has to onboard them onto a bank or banks, because they need to open accounts for them with BVNs. All of that needs to happen before we can actually get the data, send the data to NIBS, and then the NIBS comes back to us. NIBS is the interbank payment system, which has the BVN server. So we send all the data of the cooks to NIBS, and NIBS now verifies that they actually exist before we can start paying the cooks to feed the children. So a lot of, I mean, there's so many steps, and without the state, we won't be able to engage. So it's not like we did pilots. We just worked with the states as they came on board, as they met our criteria. We set the standards, and they need to meet the criteria. So this is why some are slower than others. With the cash transfer program, we had to, With the cash transfer program, we had to depart from the past in which random lists were collected of people that were poor. We have over 80 million people that are poor in Nigeria today. We had to find a scientific method for ensuring that we engage only the poorest of the poor. So we have to create a social register. Creating a social register means we have to open offices at the state level, manned by staff of the state, because we're building capacity in the state. So we review their CVs. We don't want people that have no education. We want particular skills. We have to engage with people in the local governments, train them to become enumerators with advocacy on gender issues, and then they go into the communities and engage the communities, ask them to define what poverty is in their context, because we have to go around the entire country. And then ask them to determine, to show us who the poor households are, the poorest households, based on the criteria or the parameters that they have drawn up. So we rely completely on the community to tell us who is most deserving. And then we visit, or the enumerators visit each of those households and take down the details, data from those households. It is that data that we use to pay. We determine who pays, because the information has things like how many people in the household, how many wives, how many children, educational levels, roofing material, assets, and we have a PMT formula on the device which actually sorts all the people that are entered on the device, from the poorest to the least poor. That way we can exclude those who actually have been captured because they're elite. It is only those below the PMT formula that we pay. So there is there's a process just to ensure that we have a credible list of people that we pay. And if the state does not engage, the state doesn't give the right people, doesn't open an office, doesn't support us to engage in those communities, we won't be we won't be able to go anywhere. And you see, in every ward also, the state has to give us facilitators, we call them community facilitators, who we train to teach the beneficiaries savings, how to form savings groups, how to hold their hands through, nutrition, hygiene, sanitation. Every week, these local government facilitators go and meet these beneficiaries and mentor them. So it's actually cash plus, mentoring or coaching. All of that needs to be on ground. So for those two programs, we have not gone as fast as we could have.
It's all right.
Because
I'm just wondering
we need the state to engage.
How robust and comprehensive the National Social Register that you talked about earlier is. If indeed all the 36 states of the Federation have already been captured. But a couple of days ago, the Senate ordered an investigation into an alleged use of the federal government's special intervention project funds for President Muhammadu Buhari's re-election. The Senate Minority Leader Abiodun Olujimi claimed that the funds had become politicized. She even showed the Senate a form that was carrying on it, "I stand with Buhari." How exactly do you react to this allegation?
Well, from what I understand, that form, they say, is used by cash transfer to engage the cash transfer beneficiaries, which to me is a bit absurd, because the majority of our cash transfer beneficiaries actually cannot read and write. So why would we want to slow down our processes? It's tedious enough as it is. We do not issue forms. How I have described this, I mean, the processes is how we work. Now, that said, I have no control over what happens when people outside our office decide to do anything. I have been saying I would like to see this form, and I would like for these people to be identified. You know, for instance, the trader money. We found, or we heard, that some people had cashed in on this thing and were now collecting SIM cards, I mean, selling SIM cards to people in the communities. We've had them arrested because they're posing as our staff. Nigeria is so diverse. You know, so it is a problem, but I say categorically that we don't issue forms at all on any of our programs. The Empower portal is there, it's clear. There is nothing like, I mean, our leadership emphasized from the very beginning that it is not about party affiliation, it's not about culture, it's not about ethnicity, it's not about religion. Poverty does not recognize any of those indices, any of those culprits that are prevalent in some parts of this country. All we need to do to get it right in Nigeria is to ensure that our poor, or the poorest of our poor, get, you know, some succor, they get some support as an entitlement from government.
Okay.
So this is how we have proceeded. I assure. Okay.
All right. Now, the Empower program, or some of the SIP, or the Social Investment Program, they have a duration of 2 years, especially the Empower. Talk to us. At the end of 2 years, what happens? Or if there's going to be an amendment to that to keep it going, let us also know what's the plan.
Well, when we started, we told them clearly it's 2 years, because the Empower is about taking ownership, learning as you grow, right? So we told them you'll be paid 30,000 naira every month for 2 years, and in the meantime, you get your hands dirty in the vocation that you have selected. So if you're in the farming, the N-Agro segment, you will know within 2 years whether it's harvesting or preservation or transportation or export, wherever it is that you have an interest. And that, I know from the stories we're getting, a lot of people have begun their businesses. They each have a device that they take home every day, and it's theirs, and it has all the modules that support them in the vocations that they choose. Now, the 2016 batch comes to an end in December, but the government has magnanimously agreed to extend the period of service, because really there needs to be a transition. A lot of them have been clamoring that they need to be fixed somewhere. They want to be taken up by, I mean, they want to be employed by the federal government or the state government. And we all know that this federal government cannot impose on the states to employ anybody. So what we're doing in this period is trying to see how we can fix them up with give incentives to states for them to employ them, or to set them up as employers or entrepreneurs. So we're going to be having tests online, psychometric tests, to understand where they belong. And we've met with a number of agencies who are eager to take them on. And take them, because they've been trained, more or less. They have a lot of experience. For 2 years, they've been working in the different vocations, and they understand a lot of the issues or a lot of the challenges and how to resolve them. So they will be on for another, at least another 4 or 5 months, to see how they're able to integrate into the society. That said, there will still be a few that may not be able to be either of the three categories.
It's all right.
So we're thinking of a reasonable exit package.
Tell us the level of involvement of the World Bank in all of these programs. Earlier on, you were quoted to have said that the World Bank contributed $500 million for conditional cash transfer and livelihood support. How often are these funds released, and how involved really is the World Bank?
So the World Bank, the World Bank has given $500 million. They have only an interest only in investing in cash transfers based on their experience around the world. The other programs are relatively new. In Nigeria, it's the first, NPAR is happening for the first time in Nigeria anyway. So, and so is JEEP. So what World Bank did was to give us $500 million to see how we can address poverty. So it's developing the register, and it's also paying these beneficiaries. And they have a lot of technical expertise that they've lent to us. A mission just ended last week. No, they left yesterday, sorry. They come once in a while with experts, and they help us try and fine-tune so that we're able to address a lot of what we're doing. And I should also add that UNICEF has given us expertise also. Now, for the first time, we started using World Bank funds just this October, because World Bank has been trying to see how we can pay in a very transparent manner. We could not wait. The majority of our beneficiaries live in areas where there's no power, there's no connectivity, and so there's no banking infrastructure at all. For them to be able to access their 5,000 naira, we actually pay 10,000 naira every 2 months, they would need to travel. And that would just take away from the funds that we give them. So we had to conduct a very transparent process in which certain agents who have the reach and the capacity and the expertise to pay in communities were selected. And they have been going to those communities on payday to make payments to our beneficiaries. Many of them are old and incapacitated. Many of them are unable to travel long distances in any event. So we've set up this structure because we couldn't wait for government to provide the infrastructure before we start trying to address poverty.
All right.
And it's so important that we do the poverty, and we do. So what World Bank has done now is to support us to provide a technology back end. So our agents now, every time we make payments, we can see in real time when our poor collect their stipends. Before we had paper, we used paper, so the beneficiary would sign off, the community would sign off, community leader, and the agent would sign off. And it was such a tedious process just reconciling. But World Bank said, let's support you to put this up with the agents. And since that was up, we ran a few pilots and it started running. So now we're using the World Bank funds to make the payments.
All right.
Which has actually relieved us.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have to leave you here now. Thank you very much, Miriam Uwais, Special Advisor to the President on Social Investment Program. It's good to have you on the program. We thank you for giving us some level of insight into what is going on. We hope to have you again as we get along, so Nigerians can really have other understanding of the questions they have regarding this. Thank you for coming.